Office of Inspector General. On August 30th, 2014, Jason tragically died at the Tomah VA as a result of what was medically deemed mixed drug toxicity. The Simkowski family lost a son, a husband, a father, and we lost somebody who faithfully served this country. If there's one thing that I want to come out of this hearing and one thing that comes from this report, I want it to be this. I want everyone to hear the voice of Jason's wife, Heather, who said, and I quote, "When I look back at the past, I want to know we made a difference. I want to believe we have leaders in our country who care, and I want to inspire others to never give up because change is possible." Jason's family, just like veterans and their families in this community and communities across Wisconsin, are not interested in finger pointing and the blame game, and neither am I. That's why over the past year I focused on solutions to the problems at the VA. We've worked across party lines to advance reforms that will improve transparency at the VA Inspector General's office, to strengthen protections for whistleblowers, and to provide stronger oversight of VA prescribing practices. I authored a reform that was recently signed into law which requires the VA Inspector General to submit reports to Congress and make them available to the public. That is the standard that must now be met. Last year I had the honor of working with Jason's family to develop legislation to provide the VA with the tools that it needs to prevent this type of tragedy from occurring to other veterans and their families. 1 year ago, I introduced this bipartisan legislation in Jason's name, and it's earned the support of many veteran service organizations, and I'm so proud, Senator Johnson, to have you join in this effort. I am pleased that the House of Representatives recently passed a version of Jason's bill, and I'm equally grateful to members of the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee for their bipartisan support of Jason's bill, the Jason Simkowski Memorial Opioid Safety Act. It's a critical reform and it continues to move forward. Families like Jason's have a story to tell, and it needs to be heard, and the movement of their legislation is strong evidence that their voice is being heard. My goal is to put these reforms in place to prevent Jason's tragedy from ever happening to another veteran or any of our veterans' families. Change is indeed possible. Heather's words inspire me, and it is my hope that they will inspire all of us to work together and to prevent these problems and tragedies from ever happening again. And thank you, Senator Johnson, for providing me with this opportunity to join you today, and I look forward to continuing our work together.
Thank you, Senator Baldwin. Senator Carper, who is our ranking member of the committee, has a statement and minority views amendment that he'd like to keep in the record without objection. It is the tradition of this committee to swear in witnesses, so if you'll all four rise and raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you will give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Our first witness is Mr. Sloan Gibson. Mr. Gibson is the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs. Deputy Secretary Gibson is accompanied by Dr. Gavin West, Senior Medical Advisor, Clinical Operations, Department of Veterans Affairs. Mr. Gibson.
Let me begin by expressing my heartfelt sympathy to the Simkowski family. I know that no words can ease the pain of your loss. Everything I miss it, I have not recognized the courage and the compassion and the deep devotion that you've displayed and all the work that you've done since Jason's death to make a real difference in the lives of the veterans. Thank you. And prior to his appointment to the responsibility you described, Dr. West served as the Chief of Primary Care and Associate Chief of Medicine, accountable for the delivery of evidence-based, high-quality, patient-centered care across VA. He continues to practice medicine at the Salt Lake City VA healthcare system, where he teaches medical students and treats veterans in primary care with a focus on pain management and substance abuse. He understands the issues and challenges we're facing at Tomah from years of traveling across the country working to optimize clinical care. As many site visits to VA medical centers included visits here at Tomah. Most importantly, perhaps, is that Dr. West served as the co-chair of VA's National Opioid Safety Program. Jason's death forced us to dive deeply into the Tomah system. What we found was an organization facing numerous challenges and dire need of change in new leadership. The problems at Tomah have been well documented. Failures related to the prescribing practices of controlled substances. Examples of inadequate oversight of care delivery and failures related to culture. We own those challenges and problems, those failures. I own those problems, those failures. Avoidable harms to veterans are unacceptable. When they do occur, our obligation is to act with urgency to investigate and prevent a recurrence. At Tomah, it was a clear and inexcusable lack of leadership that created and exacerbated these serious problems. The excellent frontline staff here at Tomah that you've acknowledged in your comments, Mr. Chairman, working under new leadership is fixing those problems. On October 5th, we appointed Victoria Braun as acting director. In her new role, Vicki didn't wait to take action to improve veteran care. On November 27th, she began executing Tomah's 100-day plan. For those of you that are unfamiliar with this concept, 100-day plans are a best practice of new leaders as they transition into their roles. They're not meant to fix everything, but to set a clear and bold direction while delivering near-term tangible results. The 100-day plan period ended in March, but the work continues to transform the way Tomah leaders operate, to change how Tomah treats our veteran patients, and rebuild trust with veterans, employees, and the community. Thanks to this ambitious plan and the dedication of caring frontline staff, Tomah, once a symbol of the overuse of opioids, is actually on its way to becoming a model for change in best practices. Let me highlight some of the great work by Vicki and the staff. In April, Tomah completed more than 98% of their appointments within 30 days. In fact, nearly 17,000 appointments were completed in April. Of all of those, 217 were over 30 days from the date that the veteran wished to be seen. Their wait times are consistently among the best in all of VA. For primary care, less than 3 days. Specialty care, less than 6 days. And for mental health, a little more than 2 days. Vicki and the team are working to restore trust among veterans. She's opening lines of communication with our veterans by opening her door, meeting with countless veterans these past months. Other continuing efforts include developing an academic detailing team to review the medical center's most complex chronic pain patients and provide additional recommendations for their care. To support this initiative, more than 30 primary care and mental health providers attended academic detailing educational sessions in the month of March. She's also creating a veteran pain school to assess and customize alternative pain management strategies for veterans. Importantly, Tomah has reduced the number of veterans receiving opioids by nearly 1/4. Tomah partners with the Wisconsin State Prescription Drug Monitoring Program, a program designed to ensure veterans are not obtaining opioid medications from multiple providers. Another step forward is the effective use of VA's audit tool, which allows doctors to improve practice and safety by seeing all the medications veterans are taking on a single dashboard. Vicki's made overdose education and naloxone rescue kits available to patients at risk of accidental or intentional overdose. Naloxone has proven effective in reversing an opioid overdose. Simply put, she's finding options, alternatives, and solutions other than just a bag of pills. Let me tell you about one of Tomah's best practices. Evidence shows that the best outcomes in pain management occur with a comprehensive approach across multiple disciplines, with the patient as the central focus. This empowers the veteran to be an active participant in decision-making regarding pain care options. Tomah developed the Integrated Pain University, which is strongly based on patient education and empowerment. This whole health perspective identifies and addresses biological, psychological, and social aspects of pain management in conjunction with assessment by the patient-aligned care team and any necessary specialty consults. Additionally, veterans receive information through a variety of elective classes taught by their respective healthcare professions, which include pain medications, pain and nutrition, pain and sleep, aromatherapy, mindfulness, the neuroscience of pain, introduction to movement, staying motivated, and spirituality. The result of these and other efforts, as of the second quarter of fiscal year 2016, just over 9% of veterans at Tomah are prescribed some form of opioid. Across the entire country, across all of VA's population, that national rate is nearly 13%. Vicki and the team are also listening. They're listening to veterans, to their community, and to employees. Listening led to the development of the Tomah VAMC Veterans Experience Council and the Strategic Partnership Committee. The Veterans Experience Council will help make sure that Tomah leaders have a clear understanding of how veterans perceive VA, while the Strategic Partnership Committee will work to strengthen and promote a unified approach to veteran care throughout the community. Vicki's hosted more than 15 employee listening sessions covering all work shifts at the medical center. These listening sessions are critical in getting a sense of how staff can better serve veterans while using input from these sessions to improve employee engagement, making sure employees are satisfied with their work environment. Monthly staff meetings, quarterly nurse town halls, and roundings with local union officers are all part of the larger efforts of our commitment to employees. As a result of these and many other actions, we're seeing Tomah's performance improve as measured both internally and by veterans themselves. By understanding the challenges and taking ownership of the problems, Vicki and the leadership team are improving the organizational culture and climate, providing more oversight, effective oversight of care delivery, and addressing problems in prescribing practices. While there's more work to be done, this strategic direction has led to a real positive change. Vicki's modeling effective leadership by taking ownership and accepting accountability of past mistakes in order to make tangible progress in caring for our nation's veterans. Bob McDonald and I talk a lot about sustainable accountability, making sure employees understand our mission, values, and strategy. It's accountability that results in positive veteran outcomes, not just in the very near term, but over the long term as well. And I believe that's what we're seeing here at Tomah. Across all of VA, our work to change prescribing practices and develop alternative approaches to pain management is delivering steady progress. We've also developed a predictive model and clinical decision support tool to identify patients being treated with opioids who may be at risk of suicide-related events or overdose. This stratification tool for opioid risk mitigation estimates the likelihood of an overdose or suicide event in the next year, providing patient-tailored recommendations for risk mitigation and non-opioid pain management options. Lessons learned have taught us that greater engagement improves lives. We're also getting unwanted drugs out of veterans' hands. Removal of veterans' unwanted and unneeded medications reduces the risk of diversion, as well as intentional or unintentional overdose or poisonings. As of May 1st, approximately 27,000 pounds of unwanted and unneeded medication have been collected and destroyed in an environmentally responsible manner. The overuse and misuse of opioids is a national problem, not just a VA problem. What we're doing here at Tomah and across VA is part of a broader national effort to fight opiate addiction and overprescribing of powerful drugs. Our hope is that VA's efforts here and elsewhere will become part of a national approach that will benefit not just veterans, but all Americans. We still have work to do. With your support and the support of many others, we will succeed. The needs of veterans can't be secondary to other agendas. It's unacceptable to VA leadership and should be unacceptable to anyone claiming to care about our nation's veterans. I need your help to change the dialogue and the perception of this facility in order to get the right people interested in these jobs. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your committee's support in identifying and resolving challenges here at Tomah. I will look forward to your questions.
Mr. Gibson. Our next witness is Mr. Michael Missel. Mr. Missel is the Inspector General for the Department of Veterans Affairs. I had the privilege of going on the Senate floor and asking unanimous consent to have it confirmed. I know Senator Baldwin and a number of us were calling for a permanent Inspector General, and we're glad we have one. Mr. Missel is accompanied by Dr. John Day, Assistant Inspector General for the Healthcare Inspections within the VA Office of Inspector General. Inspector General Missel.
Thank you. Chairman Johnson, Senator Baldwin, Congress.
Get closer.
How's that? Chairman Johnson, Senator Baldwin, Congressman Hine, and Congressman Walz. Thank you for the opportunity to appear today regarding the Office of Inspector General's past inspection of the Tomah VA Medical Center and our work in the areas of pain management and opioid use. I am accompanied by Dr. David Day, Assistant Inspector General for Healthcare Inspections. He is a retired Army colonel and spent over 25 years providing healthcare to soldiers. First, on a personal note, I want to thank all veterans for their great and selfless service to our nation. In addition, I want to express my sympathies to the families of those impacted by events at Tomah. All of us at the OIG need to take these experiences and use them to improve VA's operations. Finally, as the son of a World War II veteran, I had a strong reminder of our mission's importance when I had the great honor of attending the reclaim ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery yesterday. On May 2nd, 2016, I was sworn in as the Inspector General. Since then, I've immersed myself to understand the people, work, and goals of our office. I have been impressed with the OIG staff, many of whom are veterans, and their focus on bringing about positive changes in the integrity, efficiency, and effectiveness of VA operations. While my integration has gone very well, I know there is much more to learn. I strongly advocate 3 overriding principles for our office. First, we must maintain our independence in all of our work, including avoiding the mere appearance of any undue outside influence. Second, we must be as transparent as possible while safeguarding the privacy of veterans, whistleblowers, and others. Third, we must produce work of the highest quality, making sure it is accurate, timely, fair, objective, and thorough. During my first month, I spent significant time reviewing our healthcare inspections of Tomah. I have also met with the Homeland Security staff on 2 occasions to ensure they have the necessary information about our work as it pertains to Tomah. My written statement contains a timeline of events related to the Tomah inspection administrative closure, and I will not repeat it here. The inspection was administratively closed given the totality of the facts identified at that time. Specifically, that the allegations could not be substantiated, the impact that disclosure of unsubstantiated allegations could have on an individual's reputation and privacy, and knowing our forthcoming 2014 national report would highlight many deficiencies in VA providers' compliance with opioid prescribing guidelines. I would like to comment on the white paper about the Tomah inspection that was issued by my office on June 4th, 2015. I do not agree with its tone or the gratuitous attacks on the reputation of individuals mentioned in it. It does not meet the high standards expected of our office. We have learned important lessons from this experience, including increasing the transparency of our work that should help us better meet our mission going forward. The changes made should increase the confidence that veterans, VSOs, Congress, and the public have in us. Subsequent to last year's hearing here, we released 2 additional inspections regarding Tomah. In June, we issued a report with local and national recommendations focused on acute stroke treatment. And in August, we issued a report regarding the unexpected death of a patient during treatment at Tomah. This report had 4 recommendations. Notably, we recommended that the facility ensure clinicians comply with VHA policy regarding written informed consent when administering hazardous drugs. The issues associated with the use of opioids to treat chronic pain and other conditions are a serious concern not just at Tomah, but throughout our nation. We continue to focus on VA's opioid prescription practices, publishing 2 reports on the topics earlier this year. That work identified many of the same issues reported in our May 2014 National Review. we found VA was not following its own policies and procedures in 6 key areas, including follow-up evaluations of patients on take-home opioids, prescribing and dispensing of benzodiazepines concurrently with opioids, and routine and random urine drug tests prior to and during take-home opioid therapy. We note VA has taken actions to implement that report's recommendations, but they must monitor facility compliance with opioid prescription policies. Later this year, we expect to publish a wide-ranging national review of VA's pain management services, substance use treatment programs, use of non-VA treatments, opioid prescribing practices, and access to state prescription drug monitoring programs. Yesterday, our nation paid tribute to the sacrifices of those who gave their lives in our defense. It is a valuable reminder for us at the OIG to rededicate ourselves to ensuring that our work is independent, accurate, timely, fair, objective, and thorough. Dr. Day and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Inspector General Missile. Do we have a timer?
Yes.
Oh, we're going to set that about 7 minutes. Okay. Mr. Gibson, let me start with you. When did the problems here at Tomah first hit your radar screen? When did you first hear about it? And you've been in the VA how long?
I've been at VA for 2 years and 3 months, 2 years and 4 months, right around there. I think I'm going to go from broad recollection because I didn't go back to check the record. I'm going to say probably sometime around January.
When the news story broke, basically.
Yes, that's correct.
So in your experience with the VA, what was during that time frame? What was the attitude of the VA, the main department, with the Office of Inspector General?
I would tell you, coming into the organization, I've always viewed, whether it's called an IG or some other entity, an auditor, that having a working relationship, a constructive relationship, albeit recognizing their independence, is vital. Because at the end of the day, we're after the same thing. I worked to try to create that kind of relationship. I always find it amusing when folks suggest that the IG has been management's lapdog, because if you go look, they issue over 300 reports a year, which means we're getting wire brushed about 6 times a week, every single week. And you scan the array of IG reports, and you'll find that there's no pandering to VA interest there. It's very strong and independent entity.
This committee's, does a lot of work with the Inspector General. We see kind of a spectrum, quite honestly.
Sure you did.
As ranking member of a subcommittee of this committee, we uncovered the corruption within the Office of Inspector General, Department of Homeland Security, and Charles Edwards basically moved on ahead of the posse. So we've seen the lack of independence.
Yes.
What I thought was quite shocking, as we got involved in this situation, is that the Office of Inspector General had 140 reports on investigations and inspections that it buried, that it covered up, did not make public. Now, I've mentioned that to other Inspector Generals, and I asked them, how many reports have you not made public? And they really look at me like I'm from some other planet. I think I've had one Inspector General say, well, there was one we didn't publish because of concerns about national security. So, do you think it's appropriate that there were 140, now there's, by the way, another 70 reports on different wait time problems that apparently now the Office of Inspector General was starting to produce on a rolling basis? But that's a shocking number of reports on investigations and inspections from an independent, transparent office that were not made public. What's your take on that?
Well, my take is that in general they should be made public, and I think that's the stance that the IG has taken. There have been instances where this Office of Inspector General has identified things in the course of their investigation that weren't related to what they were seeking to look into, where they have come to me specifically to say, you need to know about this, and where we've taken appropriate actions in the wake of that. That's the kind behind, I think, frankly, part of what you see here, and I wasn't here 4 years ago, so I can't talk about knowledgeably about what was or was not the environment and the practice, but I would tell you over my 2+ years here, that the IG's been willing to bring things to me, and I think it's a much more principles-based view. I think some of this, we get wrapped up in the rules, and we get so wrapped up in the rules, we lose sight of the principles. And so here's a case where I think, quite frankly, this is my view from the outside looking in, where we got focused on the rules, when the rules basically said, this is what we're here to investigate. And we didn't step back and look more broadly at principles, and I think the IG has demonstrated the willingness and the ability to do that in subsequent events. I don't know whether they learned from this particular instance or from others, but I think that's what we owe veterans. And I want to go back and say, notwithstanding anything else, this is a leadership failure. There's lots of finger pointing and everything else. At the end of the day, we own this. VA leadership owns this. We had ample opportunity over a period of years to fix this. That's leadership's responsibility. We failed to get it done.
I appreciate that. Dr. Day, you were part of the inspection team for Tomah, correct?
That's correct.
One of the things that comes across in our report is the confusion over what is the standard for substantiating a claim. For example, in so many instances, this wasn't he said, she said, which, again, I've been in business, I've had these employee situations where it's kind of difficult when it's he said, she said. This is the case of Dr. Houlihan, where it was he said, they said. I mean, there was so much corroboration of the allegations. How did you come to the conclusion that so many of these charges were unsubstantiated? What is the standard?
Well, maybe what I could do is go through the allegations one by one, and we could talk about them.
Well, let's talk about this. Why don't we talk about the allegations of a climate of fear, a culture of fear within the. I mean, there were so many reports, and it was so obvious that Dr. Houlihan, according to testimony, was bullied and created that and retaliated, and there were people fired as a result. And Chris Kirkpatrick committed suicide after he was fired. I mean, there was so much accumulated evidence. How could that not be substantiated?
So we did substantiate that there was an issue with the relationship between the chief of staff and the pharmacist primarily. And we transmitted that information to VHA. It was not a surprise. And the proof that we transmitted that and that it was not a surprise is at the end of our review, we sat down and talked with both the director of Tomah and the business director. And they told us at the time that we were outbriefing them of the changes they had made so that the chief of staff no longer supervised the pharmacy. They were aware of problems in the pharmacy and were working to try to correct them. So with respect to the relationship between the chief of staff and the pharmacist, our admin closure laid it out clearly that was an issue. It wasn't, in my view, the primary problem that was addressed at Tomah. The primary problem was the allegation that Tomah providers were providing narcotics outside the standard of care, and that narcotics were being distributed in such a way that the rules of law were being broken. We looked extensively to find out whether that was true. Medical experts reviewed many charts. We reviewed many emails of 17 providers, 17 individuals at VA looking for evidence of malfeasance. We worked with the Tomah police, the VA police, the DEA, multiple times looking for evidence of a problem, evidence of criminality. Our investigators went undercover looking for evidence of criminality. So I'm left with the problem of their allegations, and I just don't have the facts to support many of those allegations.
I think most people reading our report will say there's a lot of substantiated evidence to substantiate that charge. Just quick before I turn to Senator Baldwin. On page 270, we have your signature on the administrative closure sheet. Every ounce of evidence you can find shows that administrative closure occurred in August of 2014. I want everybody to take a look at page 270. It completely looks like this has been doctored from 8/12/14 to 3/12/14.
It has not been doctored.
So what further evidence other than this, what appears to be a doctored signature, what other evidence would indicate she closed this out in March versus August?
So when information flows, I would sign a document as I signed this. And unfortunately, the admin closures, they come to my desk, I sign them and I write it in.
Is that normally how you write a 3?
It is.
With an 8 kind of embodied within the 3?
That's why I wrote it.
Is there any further evidence that this was actually initially closed in March of 2014? Because everything else shows that you initially closed this in August.
No, I don't know what you're talking about. The actual date that I signed the report, it then goes into other systems, which are systems of record, and it's entered into what we call a different computer system, and it was closed at that time.
I find this unbelievably puzzling, and I do want to move on. Senator Baldwin.
Thank you. So I want to kind of start where Senator Johnson left off with regard to this process on this administrative closure. So the report, the committee report outlines a very long investigation. You use the word somewhat interchangeably. Now, the work product after the inspection, the visits, the interviews, etc., seems to have gone through a number of iterations prior to there being a decision to make this an administrative closure. I know that, and you'll see this throughout the committee report, frustrations expressed about documents that were requested from the Inspector General that were not granted to the committee. But we had an opportunity granted by the IG's office in the last couple of weeks to inspect the draft reports. Couldn't take notes, and I didn't do it, but my staff went in to see them. And so the committee has reviewed some of the drafts prepared during the Tomah investigation, and I was disturbed to learn after I was briefed that things that the IG staff was aware of didn't make it into the final administrative closure. For example, one case study referenced in an IG draft report explained that Dr. Houlihan had increased one patient's dosage of oxycodone more than 8-fold in 1 year, and that there was not always a rationale noted in the chart. During the same time frame, this patient had 9 refills of a Schedule II controlled substance dispensed more than a week early. Probably more disturbing, the case study explained, that I was paraphrasing because there was not copies available, Dr. Houlihan miscalculated the number of pills prescribed to the patient, and that Dr. Houlihan made up for the shortage by refilling the prescription early. Can you explain to me why details of these case studies referenced in the draft report didn't make it into the final administrative closure?
My instruction to the staff was because the draft report did not substantiate what I thought was the significant allegations that we were looking at, I asked them then to write an administrative closure. So the same people that wrote the draft report wrote the administrative closure. There were no instructions as to what to put in or what to put out. If you'll take a look at the 140 administrative closures that we had done previously, and I'll say that there was my understanding in our practice that if I took a hotline, I would either publish it to the web or I would note in the SAR, the semi-annual report to the Congress, that we had an administrative closure. So they were in my view, made public there, although albeit not with very much detail. Some years there was a lot of detail, some years there was not. But I asked them to write an administrative closure. So they chose, for I don't know what reason, to shorten it up, and it was, 14 pages for the admin closure. Most of the 11 pages, most of the admin closures that we published were 1 or 2 pages. So they were trying to put in the detail they thought was relevant.
Well, on that, in the administrative closure, you did note that patients requested early refill. The document does not state that Dr. Houlihan wrote in the file that he miscalculated the prescription and made up for the shortages by refilling the prescription. And to me, this tells a different story. There's also no mention that he did not always provide a rationale on the chart for substantially increasing already high prescriptions, like the example I just mentioned. So we gathered in March of 2015 the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, and you testified. You testified that staff at Tomah were, quote, at the outer boundary of acceptable prescribing practices, end quote. And this statement seems to imply to me that there may have been some unusual practices happening at the Tomah facility and within the facility's leadership. So is the example I just raised the type of thing that was on the outer boundary of acceptable prescribing practices, or is it beyond that boundary?
I would say that our view was that, in summary, he was at the outer boundary, and the fact that you described would be, in my view, probably over the outer boundary. But we thought that the totality of the care provided was at the outer boundary.
Inspector General Mitchell, I know you're new to this position, but you've read this committee report, and I guess I want to know your opinion on putting out a policy that outlines what the standard ought to be in your agency for substantiating or unsubstantiating allegations. At least for cases like this where you think it might be a close call or right outside those boundaries.
Yes, well, I've looked at that. I've had the opportunity to review the report. Standard, it's a complicated issue. For instance, with respect to investigation, when we're doing an investigation, did somebody do something? The standard to me is preponderance of the evidence. Is it more likely than not that somebody did it? When you come into healthcare inspections, you're looking at the quality of care, which is a far more complicated area. And it really depends on a variety of things of what you're looking at. You know, what the literature says, what experts may say, etc. But I understand the point. I know it was a significant issue. We intend to look very closely at that and to talk about standard of care and the standards that we're going to be using going forward. So we will be doing that.
Well, with the advantage of hindsight, this doesn't look all that complicated to me.
We're going to look at that very closely.
Thanks, Senator Baldwin. What is amazing is they had a pretty high standard for substantiating a claim in their OIG report, and yet with the white paper, they had no problem rushing out a report that literally threw whistleblowers and these individuals under the bus. It's really quite remarkable. I also appreciate the fact that you were talking about the frustration this committee's had to obtain the information. I just want to refer everybody to page 324. This is what one of the documents looks like provided by the Office of Inspector General, who is not yet complied with our subpoena. Think about that. This committee had to subpoena the Office of Inspector General to get the information, and now 60 months later, well, it's really about a year later, because we issued the subpoena at the end of April, still not complied, so this dismissal again, we look forward to working with you on that. I do want to welcome Representative Kine and Representative Walsh from Minnesota. Let's not hold that against you. Thanks for your time.
Well, thank you, Senator. I want to thank you, too, for your committee's invitation to me, Representative Walsh, to participate in today's hearing. Yesterday, many of us were at Memorial Day commemoration events. And during it, it's a sober reminder of not only our obligation to honor our fallen heroes, but the unfinished work of making sure that our veterans, those who served our nation, are receiving the care and the treatment that they earned and that they deserve. And that's always been my guiding star throughout this whole process. Given the tragedy, given the mistakes that were made at Tomah, which, according to your testimony here today, has not been unusual in regards to the VA medical system throughout the nation, we keep our focus on the veterans and making sure that that is our true guiding star, and hopefully we can bring some good out of the tragedy. And I know that is exactly what has been motivating the Simkowski family this whole time. I've been proud and honored to be able to work with each one of them when it comes to fixing the problem, to ensure that no veteran in the future goes through what that family has done. Jason's wife, Heather, and his parents, Linda and Marv, have been intimately involved in not only providing feedback on the legislation we've been working on to honor his legacy, the Jason Simkowski Promise Act, but they've even taken the extra step of making phone calls to appropriate committee members, even to Speaker Ryan, about the importance and the urgency of getting this legislation done and implemented as quickly as possible. In fact, Heather and Linda and Heather's daughter and I were just out in Washington a couple of weeks ago to make some last-minute visits, but also to personally witness the passage of the Jason Simkowski Promise Act unanimously on the House floor. And we look forward to working with this committee and you senators in order to ensure that this reaches the President's desk to get this done and implemented as quickly as possible. Heather today asked if I'd be willing to read a short 2-paragraph statement, for the record, and I asked the members of the Senate to do so at this time. She writes, and I quote, "It is encouraging to see the congressional delegation working together in honor of Jason to ensure no other families go through what we had to endure. We are proud of the progress made so far in passing legislation named after Jason. We look forward to working with the congressional delegation to make sure the legislation becomes law. We are grateful for an opportunity to see everyone come together to turn such tragedy into something that has the potential to save so many lives in the future. As we continue moving forward, we are committed to remaining focused on the bipartisan support for this legislation." Clearly, the job's not done yet, but I do want to commend Acting Director Vicki Braun, the work that has been, the progress that has been made at Tomah. This comes on the heels of the work that then Acting Director John Rohr, when he came in and inherited the challenge that existed and what they're trying to build on right now, the community outreach, working with the staff on best practices, but especially listening to the families and to the veterans themselves, making sure that they have the important say in what is taking place there. I mean, it's important that we stay focused in that endeavor. But I also would be remiss if I did mention the good work that has been done. I've been somewhat surprised by the number of veterans who have gone out of their way to personally notify me of how happy they are with the care and treatment that they have received at home. My guess is this would be fairly consistent around the country too. So although there were serious allegations and mistakes made, I don't think we should overlook a lot of the dedication, a lot of the professionalism, a lot of compassion that is taking place at places like Tomah each and every day. And sometimes, given the sensation of these stories and what the media tends to focus on, that gets lost in kind of the fog of everything that we're trying to accomplish. But Mr. Mines, while we have you here, we know you're new to the position, and it's been raised already by the senators, we did have some communication problems with the IG's office when it comes to conducting the investigation, proper notification. I know that when I received an anonymous letter back in September 2013, or 2011, I immediately forwarded that on to the OIG's office, asking them to look into it, conduct an investigation. Received notification that they were going to do that, and that we'd be notified at the end of that investigation. Now listen, I'm a former special prosecutor, and I've been involved in a lot of investigations myself. You don't know when you go into an investigation how long it's going to take, how complex it's going to be. You talk to one witness and suddenly 10 more names appear. I get all of that. But what was problematic to me and to the committees of jurisdiction was the lack of notification when the IG's office administratively closed it for certain reforms and changes that had to be made, and we were operating in the dark because there was no notification given. And I also want to commend Representative Walsh, who serves on the committee, for the work that he's done. He's been a good partner partnered through all of this, along with Gus Philarakis, a real bipartisan effort, but we're only as good as the information that's given to us. And Dr. Day, when the report did come out, and I later found out that we weren't notified, I called you and others that were involved in the investigation into my office immediately to get clarification on what was taking place. To your credit, you guys owned up that the ball had been dropped, notification wasn't given when the intent was. I know this was coming at the time of Phoenix and other news stories that were breaking at the time. But in light of all that, I introduced legislation, the Inspector General Transparency Act, which I'm glad to report was included in the year-end budget last year, which now requires that notification. So, Mr. Meisel, on that point specifically, is that going to help in your mind as far as the lines of communication, keeping policymakers informed of what changes and reforms have to be made, so we can be working together in tandem to make sure that this gets done?
Yes, I think it will help, but hopefully we don't need legislation to become more transparent. My goal is to communicate with the public, with Congress, with the department on issues that they need to. There were a number of mistakes made by my office at the time, and we agreed that one of the mistakes was not keeping Congress better informed on this issue, and I'm going to work very hard to make sure that does not happen again.
Mr. Gibson, I appreciate your testimony, written in your oral testimony today about the need to continue on a more coordinated, integrated, veteran-focused healthcare delivery system. I think a lot of ways the VA system throughout the country has been good in driving that goal, that momentum in that direction. But clearly more work needs to be done. Is there any other things that Congress needs to be working with the VA right now to make sure that you're given the policy prescription, but also the tools and resources in order to get this accomplished?
I appreciate the request, and I appreciate your recognizing the good work that goes on every day, because you're right, it doesn't get reported. It doesn't diminish the challenges that we have, but it's part of the context. The short answer is yes, and we've been working really with both of our authorizing committees on an array of legislative priorities that we have, many of which get at some of these very issues. I'm thinking most immediately of the request to make all of our medical center directors and network directors Title 38. Quite frankly, if I had that authority in my hip pocket right now, the lady sitting behind me would already be the medical center director here. And so I'm probably going to get in trouble for committing a prohibited personnel practice for having said that. She's doing awesome work, and she's the kind of person and having the kind of ability to direct hire and a little flexibility around compensation would make that possible, among a large number of other priorities that we've identified. Thank you for asking, sir.
Thank you.
Congressman Walz.
Well, thank you, Senator Johnson, for including me in this hearing, and the past one, Senator Baldwin and Kind, for all three of you, the work that you do. I'm Tim Walz. I represent Minnesota's first congressional district. It's just a little bit west of here across the river and then all the way out to South Dakota. And that river may separate us on football loyalty, but it doesn't separate us as Americans. And many of my constituents use this facility. Also, prior to being in Congress, I spent 24 years as an artilleryman and retired as a command sergeant major, and spent the last 10 years on the House Veterans Affairs Committee. So I spent the last 35 years not just talking about veterans issues, but being part of that. And I can tell you this, that as a member of Congress, the security of this nation and the care of our warriors is our number one priority. That's also the number one priority of all of you sitting out there, and every constituent in my district, in Ron's district, and across Wisconsin, Minnesota. It's also the number one priority of these folks sitting up here. You don't just get in this and leave. For example, Mr. Gibson, some of you do not know, my capacity of working with him prior to his position was he ran the USO, a fabulous organization of care for our warriors, which he did with grace, skill, effectiveness. And I think for all of us, trying to find solutions to the best care possible is what we're here for. So I appreciate all of you coming out on a day like this, and to the family you heard it. And I think that's the thing that always most strikes me in the midst of heart-wrenching tragedy that I will not even attempt to understand. A family seeking justice, which they deserve and we should deliver, but also transferring that into solutions to make sure no other family goes through it too, whether they meet them or not. And that is a very powerful call to action for us. So I look at it as our responsibility is to give them the justice, find out what went wrong, find out who's responsible, and hold them accountable, but simultaneously making sure that the changes that are being made don't happen. And for some of you to think on this is, there really is nothing new under the sun. I think about this, and folks up here, and Ron and I talked about this work get on. First two things that I was able to do when I got to Congress that actually became put into law and effective was first increasing the budget for the VA Inspector General, which at that time was incredibly low, and you simply did not have enough people to go out. We would send in requests, and you'd say, I don't have people to cover this, and we couldn't find those eyes on it. And secondly was passing step pain management on opioid reduction. 2007, people were already thinking on that, not just me, but folks up here and the folks that understood this of trying to implement that. And I guess for me, we made a good effort, and I think the VA and Mr. Gibson is right. This is an issue that is systemic to our entire culture, and it is a huge problem. Now we hear lots of people talking about it. That is great. But there are solutions out there. We need to implement them and move them forward. And I know the bill that I passed went from 2009 to 2014. We were only able to implement 31% of it by the time it expired in terms of doing this. And this is best practices that are out there. So I think today, in the time that we're going to have here today, I'm going to attempt to try and focus on what's changed at Tomah. And trust me on this. Mr. Houlihan or anyone else involved in this, justice needs to be served, and we will find that. Senator Johnson will continue to do that, Senator Baldwin. As a member of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, I want to know what you've done to make a difference. What happens with my veterans from Houston County who come over to Tomah now, and what's changed? And with my remaining time, I'm going to start on a line of questioning on this and Mr. Gibson, maybe you can help me with this. How do I know things are better at Tomah? How do I know if someone asks me, is it better at Tomah, or is it the same thing that happened when the reputation that started this was there?
I think some of the activities that I described earlier that Vicki's been engaging in, the open door with veterans, the outreach into the community, looking for ways that we bring the community together to help support our veterans. And one of the things that we started doing recently, because access is such a critical issue for us, is we started at our kiosks asking the very simple question: how satisfied were you that you got today's appointment when you wanted it? At Tomah, the answer is 93% satisfied or completely satisfied. They are doing so many things so well. You can look at the sale data. Many of you may not realize VA leads the country, perhaps the world, in reducing healthcare-associated infections. Healthcare-associated infections, second leading cause of death in America, more than automobile accidents and breast cancer combined. And external studies went and looked who was doing this better than any other organization. It wasn't the Cleveland Clinic. It wasn't Kaiser Permanente. It wasn't Geisinger. It was VA.
Not even Mayo.
Guess who leads VA? Tomah. In minimizing healthcare-associated infections. I would tell you the number one area where they've got work to do is in employee satisfaction and employee engagement, and that's the culture problem. And that's why leadership matters so much. Veterans are telling us, you're hearing from veterans that are saying, I've heard from veterans here, and I will tell you, my classmate was a patient here in the CLC for 23 years. And the family in his obituary said the staff here made them feel like they were part of their family. That's what's happening with so many of the Wisconsinites that are working right here, caring for our veterans, is they're doing the right thing. But we didn't have the right leadership in place, and I think we got a good clue.
Well, we need to give them the tools, because
yes, we do.
Owe them nothing less to hear that.
Yes.
But it's equally important as holding accountable, and if it's firing or whatever needs to be done for those people, we need to have the ability, as you said, and I'm with you on the Title 38, we need to be able to hire the best possible, because we can't fire away to a fix, but we can simultaneously get rid of the bad and bring in the good. And I yield back.
Thank you, Congressman Walsh. Let's continue on that vein about accountability. In 2015, I introduced the Ensuring Veteran Safety Through Accountability Act, and I testified with Senator Baldwin when she introduced the Jason Custody. I always forget the full name. Opioid Safety Act. At the Veterans Affairs Committee, I was more than disappointed when the representatives from the VA testified against the Accountability Act. Now, fortunately, a similar provision introduced by Marco Rubio, which I co-sponsored, was passed by the VA committee. But having been in business for 37 years, I mean, I understand that probably the most corrosive thing in any organization is not being able to hold the bad actors accountable. And yet here you have the representatives of the VA saying, we really don't want that authority to hold people accountable. I mean, that's at the heart. I mean, I agree. I think all of us here agree with this. As we tour around and we talk to the doctors and nurses, and I said in my opening statement, they do an extraordinary job. They're really concerned. But unless we really have the ability to hold people accountable, that's what causes these types of tragedies. So, is that something that the VA will now embrace? The ability to actually discipline and terminate and hold people accountable through the VA system?
I would say the answer is an unequivocal yes.
Good.
That has been part of my own personal obligation as a leader since I first got to VA. I'm the guy that takes action on senior leaders in the department. I'm the guy that issued the removal on the scientists. I'm the guy that looks at other instances of particular notoriety to ensure that we're taking the appropriate action.
Good. Well, we want to give you that authority because we have to have it. Another piece of legislation I introduced was Dr. Chris Kirkpatrick. Let me give you the full title of that one as well. The Christopher Kirkpatrick Whistleblower Protection Act. And this is really prompted by a committee hearing we had where Sean Kirkpatrick testified before our committee. And one thing that I've been literally shocked by, again, coming from the private sector, even though we have all these whistleblower protection laws on books for 100 years, the level of retaliation against those people that have the courage to come forward, like Dr. Noel Johnson, like Ryan Howell, like Chris Kirkpatrick, is jaw-dropping. So, again, I hope that the VA will embrace and help support the passage of that piece of legislation to give those whistleblowers the protection they really need. And by the way, I would announce again that my committee has set up the whistleblower hotline. This is whistleblower at ronjohnson.senate.gov. People are using that. And I think it's also an important step that's required so that whistleblowers within the VA, and by the way, the highest level of retaliation, according to the Office of Special Counsel, is within the Veterans Administration, which is a real problem. So again, will you support the Christopher Kirkpatrick Whistleblower Act?
I don't know what's in the act, and I also don't know what's in the accountability legislation you referred to earlier. But what I will tell you is that I personally, as the acting secretary, met with Carolyn Lerner, the Special Counsel of the United States. I committed to VA becoming certified, the first large federal department that became certified as a whistleblower protecting organization. I have publicly recognized and presented awards to whistleblowers. I meet with whistleblowers at every location where I go visit. When I came to this location last year, I met with Ryan Howell. I do that. Coming out of the private sector, I understand that your most valuable source of information on how to do things better are your frontline employees. The last thing you want are people that are afraid to raise their hands. So everything we're doing as an organization has to do with creating that kind of culture. A little bit along the lines of what Mike said earlier, I don't need a law to tell me to do that. That's back to just good leadership, not necessarily from me, but from people across the department.
Well, I appreciate that. Dr. Day, as I'm going through the committee's report, and you see the first hotline notice really was about March 2011, and for whatever reason, didn't rise to the level. And then in August 2011, partly because of Representative Kine's inquiry, so it all of a sudden became a congressional hotline, or a congressional inquiry, gained a little steam and got the notice. But it took till 2014 to complete this inspection, investigation, and then issue some kind of report. There's an awful lot of activity. I think the first site visit was in 2012, and not a whole lot happened in 2013 into whatever date it actually was closed. What was happening during that point in time?
Well, let me first set the record straight on the issue of the date at the bottom of the report. That date is accurate. And if you'll look at the emails which transmit the PDF of the report I signed, you'll find that those dates are consistent with the date I
Okay, good. So we got, great, appreciate that.
That's absolutely the truth. And I believe that data may be in your hands now. I'm not absolutely sure how many of the thousands of records we gave you in the past. The problem with this Tomah allegation was we got a letter that was very early on that laid out a whole series of cases which alleged that there was horrible care provided. And unfortunately, I received many more allegations than I have the resources to investigate or inspect. So with that letter, we read it. I didn't have the resources at the date that came in, and so I sent it to VHA. I usually send it to one level above, so I would go to the VISN. And the VISN wrote us back a letter with each of the cases outlining how the quality of care had been appropriate. So we read that letter. We said, okay, this makes sense. We'll say that we'll close this at this point in time. As part of the CAP process, we have an employee survey where we ask employees what their view of the world is with respect to quality of care at a facility. And we did a CAP about that time, and a number of Tomah employees indicated that there were concerns about medication abuse at Tomah. We had that back. We got a letter from Representative Congressman Kine, saying there was an issue. So we said, okay, we need to go out to Tomah and figure out what the real story is. And so that launched our review. I sent the team out there, as you know, and we talked to we made calls before, we got all the data we could ahead of time. We went out there, and the allegations continued to increase. I think the admin closure list 32 or 33 different allegations. So as the allegations increase, you go down more and more tracks. And as we would go down a track, unfortunately, we got a lot of dead ends. People would say a certain transaction had occurred at a certain place. We couldn't find any data for that. We couldn't find evidence for that. So we decided then that what we needed to do was to pull all the emails for employees that worked there for a certain period of time. So we have to stop and say, okay, let's go get the emails. We got an email pull that was insufficient the first time. We had to go actually to their computers and pull the email off their computers to get that back. We have to read that email. We were in continuous conversation with the DEA, trying to understand where they were or did they have any issues with this. I then met with our agents, 51 group, the investigators. They agreed to go on site, so they went on site and did work. So it took a long time if you have a relatively small number of people and you have allegations that explode to run down each of these tracks.
And yes, I appreciate it, and yes, the VA, when they undertook their own investigation, together with this committee, in just a couple months, pretty well substantiated the charges and started holding people accountable. So
I think for me the important question is whether or not VA was aware, as we were doing our work, of what we were finding, and were they aware that there were issues at Tomah? And I believe that they were at the local level, the VISN level, and at VAMC aware that there were issues at Tomah that needed to be addressed, and that we were in communication with them. Not every fact was presented to them until we were able to assemble the facts and put them out there and lay them out for everyone to see clearly.
I would argue that the responsibility of the Inspector General is to make that information public and also make sure that something is done about it.
So
and that didn't happen. I'm out of time here.
On the issue of accountability, I have a question for you, Gibson. Dr. Dr. Houlihan was fired from the VA. And at the time that he was fired, I wrote to the VA to ensure that veterans would not ultimately be referred to his practice outside the VA through the Veterans Choice Program. Subsequently, through public reports, his license was suspended by the state of Wisconsin, and I received a letter back from the VA indicating that he would not be eligible to serve veterans under the choice program because his license was suspended. You may or may not be aware, again, through public reporting, it appears that an administrative law judge has reinstated his license during the pendency of proceedings before the state. And so I want to, first of all, get assurances from you that in light of that new development, that Dr. Houlihan would not be getting referrals of veterans through the Veterans Choice Program.
Absolutely not.
And
Senator Baldwin, if I can just interrupt, that's an incredibly important point you're making. That administrative law judge is citing the white paper. So, Inspector General Missile, would you repudiate that so that that can no longer be used by the administrative law judge, that white paper?
Yeah. My office took the white paper off its website, so to me that means it no longer is a document of the Inspector General's office.
Thank you, Senator Baldwin.
so this correspondence between me and the VA has highlighted for me that nothing in the VA choice legislation explicitly requires that somebody who is fired or suspended from the VA for cause related to their service, to our nation's veterans, there's nothing that explicitly addresses this in the law. And so I feel like this is a dangerous loophole that we currently have. I've recently introduced bipartisan legislation that just passed the Senate, although it has not made it all the way through the legislative process. That legislation...
I don't think any of us want to live under that, and I don't think any of us want to get rid of the good employees who are there. So what I worry about is, we go gung-ho to say, just clean the dang place out and fire all these. You got a food service worker who's been stripped of their right to have someone represent them, bring an allegation forward against bad management, and they don't have anyone to stand for them, and they're gone. And it's still so. Secretary Gibson, your point on this is you don't need a law to do a lot of these things. What you need is an ethical compass and the moral responsibility to care for our veterans, which I believe we're starting to get there. But what we're hearing from up here is, what can we do to ensure that the public believes that? Believes that we're not protecting bad employees, believe we're not protecting and giving rights that no one else in society would have for bad employees to continue to draw a paycheck. Does the Title 38 and some of these tools because of that, I think this is a very important point you're bringing up, and this is why that simultaneous accountability with improvement, if I could, Senator Johnson, just end with this, that we as a nation need to not talk about those 22. We do not need to set expectations that this is an outcome that's going to happen. We've got to talk about names and an individual. So when we're talking about the mistake here, it's Jason and his family.
Yes.
What we're going to produce in the future is that individual, and I think that attitude takes us in a better direction.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Congressman Walz. I want to be respectful of everybody's time here. Another round of questions would definitely eat into that time. So certainly encourage the members of the committee here and the Congressman to